So listen, welcome to the Property Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Ronnie Edwards. For more than 30 years, I've worked in the environmental and property damage industry. Over the years, I've worked with homeowners, commercial property owners, contractors, insurance companies, adjusters, attorneys, and property management companies, just to name a few. And after all these years, I've come to one conclusion. One of the most important documents you'll ever own is your property insurance policy. Whether it's your home, your business, a space you might be renting, or even an investment property. Most property owners have never actually sat down and read their insurance policy from beginning to end. And if they have, most don't fully understand what they're reading. Think about that for a minute. We're talking about one of the largest investments most people will ever make. Yet we spend years paying premiums on a policy we never really taken the time to understand. I don't think that's because people don't care. I think it's because insurance policies can be very complicated. So we save the PDF and we tell ourselves we'll deal with it whenever we need it. Unfortunately, that's usually the first mistake because by the time you need your insurance policy, you're already dealing with a crisis. I recently came across a story on the news about a group of commercial tenants dealing with exactly this. A sewage backup hit their building. Their suites were left unusable. And when it came time to talk about who was responsible for the repairs, the landlord and the tenant didn't agree. Now, I don't know every detail of that situation, and I'm not going to comment on who's right or who's wrong. But here's what I do know. Situations like that happen because nobody had a clear, documented answer to two questions before anything went wrong. What does the policy actually cover? And what does the lease actually say about who's responsible? Those are two different documents, two different conversations, and most people don't look closely at either one until they're standing in the damage. Now you're trying to understand your policy while making decisions under stress. That's not the best time to learn how your insurance policy works. Over the last 3 decades, I've watched property owners ask the same questions over and over. What does my policy cover? Who's responsible for this? Why didn't anyone tell me? Those are difficult conversations to have after a loss has already happened. Here's something I think every property owner should understand. What your property needs and what your insurance policy covers are not always the same conversation. So let me say that again because it's very important. What your property needs and what your insurance policy covers are not always the same conversation. That doesn't mean anyone has done something wrong. It doesn't mean your contractor is wrong. It doesn't mean your insurance company is wrong. It simply means insurance coverage and building performance are two different issues. One determines what may be covered under your policy. The other determines what the property actually needs to return to a safe, healthy, and functional condition. Understanding the difference can help you make much better decisions. Now, let me be clear. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a public adjuster. And I'm not here to interpret your insurance policy. I'm simply sharing what I've learned after spending more than 30 years working with damaged properties and the people affected by them. If there's one piece of advice I'd give every property owner, it's this. Set aside an hour this week, pull out your insurance policy, read it, highlight the parts you don't understand, call your insurance agent, ask questions, understand your deductibles, understand your responsibilities after a loss, understand what's covered and what isn't. Don't wait until you're standing in water, dealing with smoke damage, or facing mold. Learn about your policy before you ever need it. At Edwards Environmental Consultant, we don't interpret insurance policy. We investigate properties. Our job is to help property owners understand what their property is actually telling them through a property wellness investigation. Because informed property owners make better decisions, and better decisions begin with information, evidence, not assumptions. The property is always telling a story. The question is, are you listening? If you want to know what your property is actually telling you, give us a call or book your property wellness investigation online at yourrestorationconsultant.com. I want to leave you with one challenge. Tonight, find your property insurance policy. Read it. Write down every question you have, then schedule a conversation with your insurance agent and get those questions answered. Don't wait until you have a claim. Do it now. I'm Ronnie Edwards, and I want to thank you for joining me for my very first episode of the Property Wellness Podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share this episode with someone you care about, and help us build a community of better informed property owners. And remember, there's only one way to do it, the right way.